Well, this model can explain every single observation, every single fact regarding gravity. So right there, there's enough evidentiary support for this model. Second, there's something called quantum gravity versus space-time. What they're really talking about is gravity that works on the small scales, atoms, protons, versus galaxies, solar systems. No one has been able to bridge these two together. Stephen Hawking himself has spent most of his life trying to find a way to bridge these two together. Well, my model is the only model of gravity that works on all scales. So you want to consider it that way? That's something that not even Stephen Hawking could do. Third great benefit, magnetism. One of the difficulties with coming up with a unified field theory, unified energy, is because they can never get gravity to play well with magnetic energy. No one can figure out how to put those two together. Well, my model of gravity actually makes gravity and magnetism work very easily together. This will lead us to the true unified field theory, unified energies. In addition, all of the Newtonian equations fit in nicely and can be explained easily. Quantum gravity can be explained easily. It also explains things that no one could ever explain before. Atomic orbitals. Bohr figured out that there are certain atomic orbitals, and he said they're stationary. I don't know why they're stationary, but they're stationary. Gravity, my new model of gravity, explains exactly why those orbitals are in those positions and no other. So again, that shows something, that supports something that no one else could explain.
Woo!
All right. So there are a number of good validations for this. Now the model itself is actually simple when you understand it. But because it's new, I have to spend some time explaining it. I do have a book, Introduction to Gravity Strings, which has been published for over a year. In there I've got detailed descriptions, illustrations. That way you can work through it slowly. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you the summarized, brief version. As I said, it's actually very simple once you understand it. So I hope that with these little models here, you can figure it out. So this new model is called gravity strings. I have a particle here, and attached to these particles are gravity strings. Now I'm going to review the last presentation. Particles are made of energy strings. There's magnetic energy strings and electrical energy strings. These are interwoven together, and that's what creates a particle. Gravity strings are basically similar to those magnetic energy strings. It's just magnetic energy versus magnetic energy. Also, magnetic energy strings are able to wrap around particles. The gravity strings do not, and perform slightly different functions, but they're essentially the same thing. Okay. Gravity strings are the thinnest and wispiest strings of all energy strings. That's why you can see here the particles have thicker strings, but the gravity strings are much thinner. Okay? They're physically attached to the particle at the mass. Mass is just a concentrated form of energy. Right? So we have the mass spots right here. The gravitational energy string extends from it. And you have these strings throughout the entire particle. That is basically how that works. Now that we got the structure, let's talk about the magnetic energy strings and how they operate. A big insight into the way new gravity works is that gravity strings pull on their own object. For centuries, people have said, okay, we have the sun and the earth. The sun is pulling on the earth. No, the sun is pulling on itself towards the earth.
How is that?
I'll explain. We have a ball that's dropped down to the ground. You say, okay, the earth is pulling on the ball. No. The ball is pulling itself towards the earth, and the earth is pulling itself towards the ball. This can explain a lot of things that people couldn't understand. They didn't like what they call action at a distance, because how can that possibly work? Well, it's not action at a distance, it's each particle pulling itself. Now, there are several analogies I use. The first one is the strongman and the locomotive. Have you ever seen a strongman competition? They have this big burly guy on a harness, and he's attached with some thick chain or rope to the locomotive. And that guy pulls on the locomotive. Slowly but surely, he pulls. The same thing with the gravity strings. They're pulling on their particle. They're pulling on their planet. They're pulling on that boulder. The second analogy, same concept, is a dog sled. Up in the Yukon Territory, you have a team of dogs. They're all harnessed together and harnessed to a sled. Now, the dogs, each dog provides an energy. That's in their own individual energies. But because they're attached to the sled, they will pull the sled forward. Or a carriage and a team of horses. You know, you pick your favorite Western movie. You have this old-time carriage and a team of 4 to 6 horses. The horses, individual energies, but they're tethered together and tethered to the carriage. They're pulling the carriage forward. That's how this works. These energy strings actually contain little energy units. I'm not going to explain the details now. I'll do that in another presentation. But you can consider them like individual dogs or individual horses. They are each tethered together, each individual bits of energy, each tethered together, and ultimately tethered to their particle. So just like the dog sled, just like the horses in the carriage, as long as the gravitational energy is moving forward, it's going to pull that particle, it's going to pull that planet forward. That's a big insight, and it's going to change